Hi, this is Michael Morton, and this is my story in my words.
Greetings, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time you're watching this episode. My name is Ulikaya Nhlokongulu, and we are back with you for another episode of My Story in My Own Words. We are very fortunate to be joined by current PSL professional football player. Let's put it like that. And we'll call him Sporting Royalty as he's joined the Royal platform with us. Guys, today we are joined by Michael Morton. Michael, good afternoon, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. Excited about this.
Thank you very much for allowing us into your space and giving us this opportunity to help share your story in your own words. And we look forward, to learning a lot more from you. Our first professional football player that we've had a hockey player, we've had someone in the business of sport. We've had a hockey coach, and the first time we've moved away from those sports, moving into more traditional sporting codes. Michael, just to kick things off, I just want to ask you, because a lot of people will be very familiar with your content that you've put out lately. And there's a clip that I particularly want to make mention of. How's the Project Messi coming along?
Oh, Project Messi, yeah. My 4-year-old twin girls, who obviously I wanted to breed into professional footballers. That was the big dream. But the more that I forced them in that direction, the more they put on a pink dress or a unicorn crown or it doesn't look like it's going to be heading that direction anytime soon. Obviously, things can change further down the line. So I'm keeping the faith. But the pink tutus and everything are still definitely in full force. And Project Messi is it's on hold at the moment.
Sure. Nice one. I think, but before we get into the actual conversation, I think I want us to take it a bit back. You currently now in the off season, and the conversation we had off air was probably the first time in a couple of years you've had a proper off season to rest and recuperate. Just a quick one. If you were to reflect over this past season, what would you take out of it?
Yeah, it was good to be back in the PSL. I've obviously been in the first division for 2-3 years. So it was great to be back in the top league. So from that point of view, it was fantastic. But then obviously devastating to get relegated again. It was not obviously part of the plan. We definitely intended to stay up. It was tough going through the playoffs. And once you go through that, you almost say, like, we can't go back to where we came from. So to then end up getting relegated, and the way we started the season was obviously put us on the back foot from the get-go. So it was tough, and when you're fighting relegation the entire season, the amount of stress and pressure on you as individuals, as a team, all the negativity that can surround you when you're in that position, it's tough to handle, and especially for the younger guys. I mean, I've been in relegation scraps before. I'd never been relegated, but it takes its toll for sure. So it was tough, and look, we finished strong and we had a good 2024, but yeah, we're just too far behind, and we started too poorly to recover eventually.
I actually saw someone, I think it was on Twitter, who had done their research. And if we look at just 2024 games from the new year, you guys were like the third best team, fourth best performing side in the new year. So the fight did come back. You guys did put up a fight, but unfortunately, as you said, starting off on the back foot wasn't the best thing, and it was pretty much very hard to recover from that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had, I think, the worst start to a PSL season, if not ever, or in the PSL era anyway. We had the worst start. So there was to come back from that. Ernst, when he came in November, obviously it had a lot of work to do. But then in January, we had that period where we weren't playing games, and he put us through some serious training sessions, probably some of the hardest training of my career. We were doing double sessions 5-6 times a week. We went away on a camp that turned into like, it was tough. So maybe we needed that. Maybe we weren't, I won't say fit, because we never had a break. We never had a chance to become unfit. So it definitely wasn't a fitness thing, but maybe we just needed to come together as a team again. But as I said, it was a little bit too late.
And I think let's take it back before we jump deeper into the current Michael Morton that everybody sees play football. I'd like us to take it all the way back, back to your childhood days. Growing up, what are some of your earliest memories of your involvement in sport? Because I know it wasn't just football all the time.
Yeah, so my father was a big footballer. He played SA varsities when he was at Rhodes University. So that love for sport in general, he's a massive Liverpool fan, or was a massive Liverpool fan. Sort of that was ingrained in us from a young age. So football was a big part of our lives, and he was a big Orlando Pirates fan, which again was imparted onto me as well as a child. But yeah, there was cricket in the house. Rugby sort of came later on when I went to high school, played a bit of rugby, but it was cricket and soccer for the most part. And that sort of stayed with me throughout my primary and high school career until the point where I eventually had to decide between the two.
And I want us to get to that point because you went to Pretoria Boys High.
Parktown Boys.
Yeah. Parktown Boys High. And no stress. And at that time, it was there's a story there because I watched another interview that you did of, you weren't just a soccer player, because soccer you were playing on the side going to the Orlando Pirates Academy, but at school you were the cricketer and you also played a bit of rugby.
Yes, so at Parktown Boys at that stage there was no football, so you could not play football if you were at Parktown Boys, so that was all done in the afternoons at Orlando Pirates. But yeah, I got a cricket bursary and a academic bursary, which eventually just became a cricket bursary. So I had a cricket bursary, and by the time I was in grade 10, I was first team playing in the first team. I was captain of the first team in grade 10 already. So I was playing provincial cricket, Gauteng cricket. So that was a big part of my life, and I spent a lot of Saturdays on a cricket field. And looking back now, where I went down the football path, maybe I regret all those Saturdays in the baking hot sun where I spent on a cricket field, where I maybe could have been doing something better. Maybe I should have played water polo or something. But it was a lot of time, and think about my mom sitting on the side of a cricket field every Saturday. Yeah, I put them through a lot. But yeah, I was always destined to go down the football route, but cricket, just because of my ability and how far I'd gone in that, it was always a sort of a question which way I was going to go. But when I never made, I think it was the under-16 Gauteng team, I missed out on that selection. That was sort of like the point where it pivoted, and I decided, let me just go double down on football. Orlando Pirates was already putting pressure on me that I was doing too many things. Like I'd be playing rugby on a Saturday morning and then like playing soccer on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah. With like ruck marks on my back, and maybe it helped me toughen up a bit. But yeah, it was probably too much. I suppose all these sports and skills have overlaps, and you can pick up different things from different sports. So if I look back now, it was probably good that I was exposed to a whole bunch of different stuff, and that's what I encourage most kids to do. Rather than, you see a lot of Project Messi's where parents are saying my child's going to be a professional athlete from the time they're 5 years old. And I think you're better off just sort of letting them do what they want to do and expose them to everything and let them decide at an older age.
And, I want to touch on the point of, so you played rugby, you played cricket, which was a summer sport, and then you played your football for the Orlando Pirates Academy. Before we get to how you joined the Orlando Pirates Academy, I just want to ask you, you're still a student, you're still studying, and you were doing well in school. How do you balance being so focused on your sport, playing different sporting codes, and still having time for your academics?
Yeah, it was tough, but at the same time, I see a lot of parents now. Being a parent myself is like, no, we need to focus on school and everything. And my mom, I come from a family of teachers. My brother's a teacher, my mom's a teacher. Like she almost prioritized the sport. She saw that I was doing okay at school. Obviously, wasn't failing or really struggling to a great degree, but she never ever said to me, "You're not going to go to soccer because you've got a cycle test or an exam or whatever." There was always a balance of like, she was the same with me where she never said to me like, no football while the academics. So I was lucky from that point of view. And I mean, I ended up at Crawford, which we might touch on later, where in your matric year, they actually don't encourage you to play sport at all, which I found very strange because I was like, you can't spend every day and every hour of the day studying. Like sport for me was always like an escape from that. You need to sort of clear your mind. It's always been almost like a meditation for me to be on a football field where it's the time where I can relax and I can put my mind on other things. And then it allows me, when I do have to eventually sit down and study and focus on other things, I have a better focus because I've had that outlay of energy. I don't have that pent up energy. I just found it always made me focus better when I had multiple things going on. And then when I did sit down to do something, I could fully focus on that thing.
And, we mentioned the Orlando Pirates Academy. And is that based in Soweto, right?
No, so it was based in Mayfair.
Okay.
Yeah, so the academy always ran out of Mayfair.
Okay. And how do you then get into the Orlando Pirates Academy? How's that story?
Yeah, so I was playing provincial football as a 12-year-old. I was playing for Southern Gauteng, and the assistant coach of that team was actually Orlando Pirates coach. So Coach Godfrey, we used to call him Coach Lolly. He said there was a lot of talent. I'd say 80% of that team was white. And he said to basically a whole bunch of the guys, like, come to Pirates. Like, the Pirates Academy started at 12 years old. Okay. So that was sort of like, so they were looking for players. He sort of said to all these talented footballers, like, come to Orlando Pirates. And I think I was the only one who really took that seriously and said, like, yeah, I want to do that. And one of the main reasons I went there, and I don't actually think I've spoken about this, is my dad actually used to play in an indoor soccer team with Pitso Mosamane and with Bob Maposo, who's from Adidas. Okay. So the two of them, and I used to play for that team from time to time as a 12-year-old to fill up numbers or whatever. And when my dad asked Pitso about like where he thought I could work on things, he always said to my dad, like, he's got the energy, he can run, he can do all those things, but maybe he needs to work on his technique, and he's not going to get that at your traditional white clubs. That maybe I did need to be exposed to Orlando Pirates Academy or an academy of sorts. And that sort of was in the back of my mind when we made the decision as well. I say I made the decision, but at the end of the day, it was my mom who had to drive me every day to Mayfair after her long school day. So, yeah, as much as it was me wanting to do it, she drove me there for 7 years every single day. So it was I was very fortunate, but that's how that all happened.
And so you joined at the age of 12, and you spent quite a lot of time, I think till the age of 20 at Orlando Pirates, which is a very long time to stay within one club. Not something that we're very familiar with if you look at the history of South African football. There's a lot of changing of clubs, and every now and again you'll get your one club heroes. But for you, going through the Orlando Pirates Academy and even getting your debut for the club, how was that experience for you as a player?
It was incredible. As I said, I used to support Orlando Pirates as a kid. My mom actually sent me something recently where one of those things when you're growing up, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah. And it was like, I had like, when I was like 10 years old, right there, I want to be an Orlando Pirates player. So like she sent that to me. She found it somewhere and in a dark closet or something that I had done when I was a child. So I always wanted to play for Orlando Pirates. So I'll never forget playing my first professional game for Pirates against Kaiser Chiefs. Was crazy. Like that was I only ever played 4 games for the first team and 2 were Soweto derbies. So I remember going back and sitting in the bus, and I don't think it had all really like it hadn't really hit home until I sat in the bus and really thought about what had happened. And I was like, it was surreal. I just sat in the bus and I couldn't believe what had happened. So yeah, I was incredibly fortunate, and those memories are still very strong in my mind. Those nights and the emotions and things that went through my mind, it was special.
And sitting now and reflecting upon your time in the academy, firstly, what are some of the challenges and obstacles that you had to overcome to literally get that opportunity to get your debut for the senior team?
Yeah, so language was a big barrier for me. I never spoke Zulu or Sotho or anything, and it's actually a big regret of mine. When I was at Parktown, instead of choosing Afrikaans as a second language, I should have gone Zulu, because I feel like in that environment I would have picked it up so quickly. But I was like, the academics, I'll be better off with Afrikaans, which in hindsight I should have just gone Zulu. But so language was tough, because obviously at the Orlando Pirates Academy they're taking guys from all over South Africa. So there's some guys who didn't speak English. And then it becomes quite challenging. So there was that side of things that was difficult. They also promoted me really early. So at the time I was 13, 14, I was already playing under 15, under 16. So also when you're that age, when you're playing with guys, it feels like they're much older than you. And so to relate to guys when you're 12, 13, and guys that are maybe in matric or older, it becomes difficult. And you feel, there were times where it was tough, and I thought, I don't have too many friends here. But then it wasn't really about fun and making friends. It was about, I want to make a career out of this. So I'd be lying if I said it was always enjoyable. At times it was like, let me get through this, because I knew where I wanted to go. But yeah, so it wasn't always enjoyment. It wasn't always about making friends. It was about like, what can I do with this? I want to become a professional footballer.
And so you started junior school playing for the Pirates Academy. You progressed then to Parktown Boys. And then there's the cricket. You're also playing provincial cricket. You're playing football as well for the academy. Making that decision, you did mention that it was probably after not making the provincial under-16 cricket side. But what other influences were there to say, listen, probably let's move the football route instead of the cricket?
So Augusto Palacios, who was running the Pirates Academy, from the time I was 15, 16, he was already saying to me, we want you to be in the first team. We want you to be in the first team. Whereas with cricket, I wasn't seeing that direct line into becoming a professional. Okay. So straight away, just the trust and the belief that Pirates showed in me, sort of showing me the path to becoming a professional athlete, and knowing that this was going to be happening 18, 19, I was already training with the Orlando Pirates first team when I was 18 years old, still at Parktown. I was still going in to train with the first team every now and again, which was, I could see the carrot was dangling there. Whereas with cricket, maybe it was going to take a little bit longer, if it would have happened at all. So there was definitely that, where the belief from Pirates definitely gave me that extra incentive to push down the football route.
And that's very interesting for me, because nowadays, when we talk about the development pathways, cricket, your rugby, those sports get a lot of attention because of their influence in school sports. They're very big in school, and there's that pathway. I mean, now there's the Craven Week that's currently happening for the rugby guys. So the rugby guys know that you play for your school, you play for the provincial side, you go to Craven Week, and then you get selected to the unions. And football is the one sport that's probably, if you're not going to an academy, it's going to be very difficult. But I find it very interesting that you mentioned that back then it was a completely different thing, that football was giving you the direct path. You could see the steps to work through to get to the first team, as opposed to the cricket, which wasn't really there. When you look at the football pathways now, what do you make of it?
It's worrying. And I say this, and I've been quite outspoken about this, because parents will come to me and say, I've got a very talented footballer. what do I do with him or her? And I actually don't have an answer for you because I don't know what the development structures are in place. I think community run clubs are not what they used to be. I mean, I remember going down to my community club, Old Parks or Randburg, and on a Tuesday night, and there would be like, you couldn't see a blade of grass, there were just kids everywhere. You'd have like A down to F teams. And I don't think we have that same support, and the clubs need that in order to be self-sustaining and to have the subs coming in every year. I don't think we have that anymore. I could be wrong, but I don't see it. And then from a schooling side of things, primary school level, everyone plays football, but as soon as you go to high school, it's completely falls away. And I went to Parktown Boys, and historically, they've actually produced a lot of professional footballers. So guys like Bradley Cornell, Gareth Devine, Ethan Brooks, Lyle Foster. These are all guys that went through Parktown, but did not play football for Parktown. So it's incredible that, like, you would think that if we had the same infrastructure and the same emphasis placed on football at these Model C, traditional Model C schools, like, you'd think, what kind of footballers could we produce? Because obviously we have a pipeline of rugby players that come and the pipeline of cricketers that come just because of the way we structure school sports. And we know once you get to first team level, then you might play provincial, then you go to the Craven Week, and then all of a sudden you're playing under 20 national team. Whereas with football, it's like completely like you might just be discovered somewhere at a tournament somewhere, someone might have seen you, and then it's like luck of the draw. We don't have a structured pipeline of footballers. And I feel like at Model C schools, you would find a lot of talented players, because we obviously already have the talented players that are coming from the informal schools and whatever, that are finding their way through the system by luck somehow. And if they're not scooped up by the young academies, and I don't even think the Pirates Academy exists anymore, to be honest. So I don't even know how that route is playing out. I know Sundowns and Chiefs are still putting a lot of time and energy into that, but I don't think I'm not familiar with whether Pirates Academy even exists anymore.
Yeah, and I want to put a question to you. So if I were to give you a magical wand, you got unlimited resources, and I put you in charge of the development of South African football, what are some of the things you would look to implement? And this is now based off of the knowledge and the personal experiences that you've had coming through the football systems in this country. How would you structure our football development, and what would you look to put in place?
Wow. With unlimited resources, I think there's so much you could do. Obviously, from a playing surface point of view, having good fields all over the place. We obviously have a lot of guys that are playing on sand and playing on dirt, and while that can be good to a certain point, it's not sustainable long term. Employ more of the ex-professionals. We have 1,000 ex-professionals that have the ability to coach as well. We could be empowering these guys to going into everywhere, into the Model C schools even, to start coaching the guys. But yeah, so from primary school level, do we have a structured football approach? Do we have provincial teams that are then feeding? Are we highlighting players at a young age from 10, 12, 13, saying this is a good group of players, and keeping that group together and going through the high school as well? Can we get buy-in from the big schools all over the country, that in the third term of the year where there's athletics, can we have a football term as well, where guys are playing football? Because we have the ability, especially more in the English schools. I know in Johannesburg, in terms of the rugby players that they're producing, is not that many compared to the Afrikaans schools. They might be better off focusing more on football. You might be producing more professional athletes, more internationals, more Bafana players. Because if I look at Parktown Boys, they produce more international footballers than they have international cricketers or football, and they don't even have football as a sport, which is crazy to me. So yeah, to answer that question in 1.5 hour interview is probably not even possible. But there are a lot of things that you could do to improve what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah, and let's move back, because we've left your career, but I want to take it back, to that breakthrough at the Orlando Pirates Academy. So you're playing for the academy, and then you get your breakthrough. I mean, you did mention you played 4 games, but getting that breakthrough for you as a childhood supporter for Orlando Pirates, and your father being a big Orlando Pirates supporter, how was that feeling for you getting in there?
Yeah, it was amazing. And I still think back to, like, it might seem like a small thing, but like the first time you ever go to the Orlando Pirates fans and you give them the skull and crossbones before a game, like that's something I dreamt of doing like my whole career, my academy career. So that was special. And it was, yeah, it was almost just all the struggle and all the hard work of my academy and working through 7 years to eventually you feel like then I'm a professional footballer when I've reached that level. And I've said this before, but also to realize the impact it has to play for a club like Orlando Pirates. I mean, it's been 15 years since I was at Orlando Pirates, but if anybody sees me in the street, football fans, they don't talk about Super Sport, they don't speak about Amazulu, they say, "Hey, Mark, I remember you from Orlando Pirates." And I played 4 games for them. I played 350 games for other clubs, but they remember the 4 games I played for Orlando Pirates. So the impact and the size and the magnitude of Orlando Pirates is incredible. And I think you'll find this also as a content creator, is that just when you start to speak about Orlando Pirates, just the engagement and everything, the scope of the club is massive. And being able to say I was once an Orlando Pirates player, yeah, it's massive.
And there's something I want to speak of, which is very big in South African football, Ikwicho, and the singing before the game. You know, we've seen videos of people, even part of the backroom staff, actually joining in and leading. You know, how much of that did you pick up during that time?
Yeah, so I can sing all the songs. I've got the whole. I've got a couple albums in me. If you ask me what they mean, then it's a whole different story. But yeah, it's become a part of me. I don't feel like I'm ready for a football game unless we get a couple songs out in the dressing room, and you can feel in a dressing room if the guys are nervous. You can feel if there's a bit of tension, or you can feel if the guys are really up for the game just based on how we sing. And there's been some dressing rooms where you don't have that, and like you feel like something's missing. And I know people from other countries or people that have come from Europe and played in our league, they find it a bit strange at first, but then immediately they get in, they get into it because it does bring you together. It's amazing. I love it, and it feels like I'm not ready to play a football game unless that happens. Like it gets my blood flowing, it gets me ready to go, and you can feel when everyone else in the team's all on board and we're ready to go. You can feel it in the way we sing. So yeah, I love it.
And I want to ask you, you know, of the albums that you say you've got within you, which one for you do you say, you know, if we sing this one, I know I'm ready. I'll run through a brick wall.
Yeah, it's changed so much. Like now, the younger generation are coming with new ones where. Yeah, I don't know. Like we're singing we're singing about Facebook and we're singing about different things, and yeah, no, it was. I wouldn't be able to give you a single one. Yeah, no, but like it feels like there's a whole nother. I'm having to learn songs on the daily. I thought I knew all of them. I was like, I've been playing for 15 years. I've been at the Pirates Academy for 7 years. Like, there's no ways there's songs I don't know now. And there's still a new one now. So there's new tracks dropping all the time. And
That's amazing. Because the reason why I also bring it up, there's another clip, and social media is amazing because there's a whole hype around it now. You know, we're seeing the Springboks embrace it. A lot of more people are actually being opened up to it. And I remember back in the days, a lot of people like saying, guys, you're wasting too much energy doing this before the game. And there's the video, I think it was the last game of the season, Cape Town City. No, I think it might have been you guys playing Chiefs. And you met each other in the tunnel. And it just became a battle before the actual game itself, where the one team was rocking up behind the Chiefs of players that were still standing there singing, and it just became a raucous. People were singing, who could sing a bit louder.
Yeah, it's quite common because obviously often the dressing rooms are on opposite sides and you sort of meet in the middle as you're about to go onto the field. So it might be sometimes where you'll get like in front of them and you're the first one to go down the tunnel. There's not enough space. And then you might just decide you're going to do a couple extra songs there and they're going to sit behind you and wait there. And then you just keep going. You just keep going.
So that's a mental game itself.
Yeah, and then like, definitely the volume goes up the more and you sort of like approach each other in the tunnel. It's quite cool. I quite like it. But yeah, it does happen.
That's amazing. And speaking of traditions in football, that was one of them. And there's a couple of myths. I want to call it myths for now, or we'll say allegedly, because that's a common word to use, wet socks at Pirates. I've heard a lot of stories, especially with Prastan and the show he did. A lot of people don't believe me when I make mention of the wet socks. Is there such thing as wet socks at Pirates? Playing with wet socks?
Well, I sort of know what you're referring to, but like for me it was never wet socks. But yeah, there's other things like there's definitely stuff where there's stuff going on kit. I think not necessarily at Pirates. I don't even remember it that prominently at Pirates. There's been other clubs I've been at that have been much more in terms of the things that are going on from that point of view. So there's like whenever people say, "Oh, Pirates," like in terms of my experience, like I didn't feel it. Like I don't even have really vivid memories of too much happening at Pirates, but yeah, at other clubs it definitely happens.
And on the interview you did with Tuso Pala, he makes mention of his experience at Black Leopards. But I want to ask you, because you've asked him, and we're going to move the question to you. You say you haven't had a personal experience with it, but
I just said I didn't have a personal experience with that at Pirates.
At Pirates, okay, let's get into it. What are some of the personal experiences you've had with that line?
Yeah, so I won't disclose the club, but maybe fans will know when I. But I've been at teams where, you basically relaxing in your hotel the night before a game, and you get a phone call like go up to room 601, and you get there and there's a guy in like a loincloth. It's like get in the bathtub. There's water. There's very dodgy looking water in the bathtub, and there I'm throwing buckets over my head and saying what I hope is going to happen in the game the next day. So it happens, and I've done it before. Like, look, I never looked at it something that's going to affect me negatively. I obviously don't believe in it, but sometimes there's expectation that everyone does it. So rather than kick up a fuss, that never really affected me personally. So I just did it, and it makes for a good story as well. So like that's just one occurrence of it. I mean, I've had times where I've had teammates put on kit and had bad reactions to the kit they've put on, where I'm playing next to a guy in the midfield and he turns to me and he's like, "Mike, like my face is itchy." And I'd be like, what do you mean your face? And I look at him, and I don't know if you've watched the movie Hitch with Will Smith.
Yeah.
When he eats that fish and his face like puffs up, and I looked at him, I was like, what? Like,
I was
like calling the physio. I was like, come, like there's something wrong with him. Like he literally changed his shirt at halftime, and they would obviously put something on the kit. And he had a bad reaction to. So I don't know exactly what this stuff is supposed to do, but I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to harm your own team. It happens, and these are the things that I've seen. Yeah.
Football is one sporting code that I love for embracing that side of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a South African thing, and I know for a long time when Bafana wasn't particularly doing well, a lot of the comments were, "We need to go back and pay."
Go to the river.
Pay our lady or the man in that loin skirt, pay them their money because we need them to turn that. But, moving along from that academy time, you then get sent out to Maritzburg United by Pirates on loan. You're 20-year-old. You leaving Joburg. How was that for you as a 20-year-old having to move away from home and go play in a different city, in a different province completely?
Yeah, at the time it was very, very intimidating. I'd never left Joburg to stay anywhere else. But when I look back now, it's the best thing that could have happened to me, because I had to grow up a lot. I was probably enjoying myself too much in Joburg at the time as a 18, 19-year-old with all my mates still there. And I was obviously the professional athlete now, and I'd earned a decent amount of money, and I was having a good time. So maybe to move to Maritzburg at that time was very good for me. But initially it was tough, and to be honest, I'm not even sure I wanted to go, because what actually happened, I'd been on loan at Wits for 2 years, and I wanted to stay at Wits, and Roger Desard actually asked me to continue at Wits. But Orlando Pirates wanted Rudolf Bester at Maritzburg United. So it was a swap deal. Yeah, so at first when Ivan Korza called me directly and said, "Look, Mark, we want to do this," and when Ivan talks, you listen.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful it happened now, because I think it is the best thing that happened to me in my career in terms of development and everything. I needed to grow up. So I look back at it fondly now, and we had an incredible 3 years in Maritzburg, and we still have amazing friends there that we're still in contact with. So I look back at it fondly, but at the time I didn't really want to go, to be honest.
And I actually want to ask you about another side of it away from the sport itself, because you essentially have to uproot your life and make that move to a completely different province in itself. You know, what happens when you get that call? So you get the call to say, Mike, I'm going to need you to probably move down to Maritzburg because this is what's happening from a contractual perspective. But in terms of uprooting your life, how does that all happen?
Yeah, so I had just bought a house in Joburg, so I was like finding tenants, finding places, yeah, and then obviously I'd never been to Maritzburg. I didn't even know where am I going to stay, where am I going to live. I think I was in a hotel for the first month, sort of finding out where we're going to be training. Look, Maritzburg's not a big place, so it's not like you gotta decide which suburb you're going to live in. Like there's like a couple different sides of town, and you work it out, and it's just sort of like where do they train, whatever. So it's like where am I going to live, and we eventually settled on a nice place that was like halfway between the training ground and the stadium, and settled in Maritzburg and started training.
And so making that move, because I know your time at Wits and Supersport is what a lot of people will talk about, because if we look at your career, it's spanned quite a long way.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said it yourself, it's been more than 15 years since you left Pirates. So you spent quite some time at Pirates as well. And sport is not really seen as a long-term career. A lot of the careers will be 6, 7, 8, 10 if you're very lucky, years of your life. But, looking at your career, I mean, you've gone Pirates, you've gone Bidvest, you've got Maritzburg, you've got Amazulu.
How much time do you have?
And there's Cape Umoya, and then there's the time down in the Cape as well.
Yeah.
Looking at your career and those moves, which one of them actually is that one that you say, listen, besides the trophies and the tie and the games and everything, which one of those do you feel, at this time of my life, I learned a lot about myself, or maybe even the game?
Yeah, Super Sport, I look back at, and it was obviously the most successful time of my career, but also in terms of the way I was playing football, the way I was used by different coaches at Super Sport. Yeah, it was probably the best time of my career, and the most I've enjoyed football. The time under Stuart Baxter, the role he played me in as a footballer, the guys I played with some of the best footballers I'd played with in my career at Supersport. We had an incredible group of guys, and there's something really special about Supersport from just the way the club's set up. It's very much family run. There's very little involvement from the office in terms of what happens on the field, but I always felt welcome there. My family always felt welcome there. There's pressure is part of football, but there's not as much pressure at Supersport.
Yeah.
Obviously, pressure to succeed, but in terms of fans, obviously, it's not the most well-supported club. So you don't get that many supporters, but then that also can benefit you from a point of view where there's not that much pressure on your weekly performances, which it makes you just a little bit more relaxed.
And would you say now that environment, the way that everything's run, the less pressure that you had on you and the team, do you feel that really helped a lot in terms of getting the Nedbank Cup?
Yeah, so it's weird. Like sometimes in sport, pressure can make you become a better athlete, but then in cup tournaments, sometimes there's enough pressure already just trying to win that you don't need added pressure from anywhere else. And we obviously had a great team at that stage, and we had great individuals. But all the things that worked together, the environment they created, the coaches that they had, and the players that they brought together, they just created a very tight unit of guys. And I don't know what it was, but we spent a lot of time off the field enjoying ourselves. Like we'd go out together as a team, which is not something I've had at a lot of other teams, but there was definitely more of a family vibe at Supersport. So I think that's definitely contributed.
And looking at, we mentioned the teams you've played for, but if you are to reflect on your footballing journey, let's put it onto on-field performances, which one of them does stick out for you? Because I know there's the game against Free State Stars, I think. I think that was a Netbank Cup game where you were amazing. Like, you were just blocking off everybody. And I think even though one of the commentators even said in the first 38 minutes, you'd won all the tackles you'd made. Every single tackle you made, you had won. But for you personally, when you reflect on your career, which game does stand out for you, if there is one?
Oh, there's a few. I'm not so good at recalling everything that happened in my career because it becomes like a bit of a blur. But there is one game, and I think it's actually one of the reasons that I ended up at SuperSport United was that at Maritzburg, I'd actually, for some reason, Middendorp had dropped me, and I can't remember what it was, but I was raging. I was furious why he didn't play me. I was sitting on the bench, and we got a man sent off in the first half. So at halftime, he came and he put me on. And I don't know if it was because I was just so angry and I was just like stuff you, I'm going to show you. But like that second half, I think I must have covered like 10 Ks in that half, and I was just like tackled everything that moved. That was probably like the best 45 minutes of football I'd ever played in my career. And I think it's off the back of that SuperSport signed me. So there are these moments, and that's a game that I look at. I think I got man of the match as well for like one half of football. It was crazy. So I look at that game. I look at the Nedbank Cup final as a 19-year-old. I was at Wits it was the first ever game at Soccer City. And it's my little claim to fame that I won man of the match in that game. So I always say like I was the first ever man of the match at Soccer City. So that was special, and was 80,000 people. And that was good. So there are some, those ones that I remember.
Yeah. And I think Coach Middendorp will probably take that, now that you've reminded him, he'll probably note it down.
Don't drop me
now
again.
Just make you play on the bench
Exactly.
just to get you angry and get you back on. But I want to speak about that relationship and having him come back. I mean, now we did mention at the start of the interview that you're now with Cape Town Spurs. And, your time there, I think it started when you guys were still in the NFD. The team gets promoted. You play the first half of the 2023-24 season. Not the best of starts. And then Coach Middendorp comes in November of 2023. Team's really struggling. I think you guys were, at the bottom of the PSL log. But, how was it having a coach that you've worked with before, a coach that does understand you, come back into the team? And what did that do for you as a player?
Yeah, I looked at him and I thought that he's someone that the club needed at the time. I know that the impact he had on me, he coached me when I was 22, 23 at Maritzburg United. He made me captain then. And I know and I'll often say this, is that I became a better player when he was there, and he had a massive impact on my career. So when I looked at our squad, we had a lot of young players, and I thought, if he comes in, he'll definitely have a positive impact here, because while he is stern and he is straight down the line, like typical German, like don't come a minute late, like our squad needed that discipline. I feel like we were starting to lack that a little bit. And with the younger guys, you sometimes need to keep them in line. So he was probably the best thing that could have happened to that squad. And I'd never say this out of respect for Sean, because he did something so incredible with our squad getting us promoted, which is an incredible feat. But maybe our squad at the time needed somebody. Sean, maybe a more loving individual, was very gave the younger guys a lot of leeway, and gave them a lot of we maybe needed a bit more discipline. And maybe that's fault of the older guys, the experienced guys. Maybe that's where we should have stepped in. But it's tough with a new generation. Where he's like, oh, listen to this old guy again. Like, maybe you do need that headmaster, that principal, to come in and say, hey, this is how things should go.
And speaking of the younger guys, I know Cape Town Spurs Academy is renowned for producing some of the best players we've had in the country. And, there's a lot of gems coming out of there. There's a lot of kids that throughout the season we've been talking about. I think Luke was one of the guys. Yeah, Luke Bartman played a very good game against Chiefs in the first game in the league, where he actually did something that we don't want to mention about Tukune. But, having younger guys like that, and there's the young boy defender as well.
There's a lot of them.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's the
Rushwin
one.
Dortley, there's Liam Byrne,
Yes, there's a lot,
yeah.
The club's known for producing those players. And I think one of the things that Ernst did when he came in was give those boys the opportunity. As senior players, how do you then work around that? There's newer kids coming in. And what responsibility does the senior guys take on when those boys come in?
Yeah, at the back end of my career, it has just been a realization that, look, it's not about really about how I perform anymore. It's about the next generation. I've, in the last 2-3 years, definitely made that switch where if there is a young kid that's ready to play and he's good to go, like, then he must play. Like, at the end of the day, I'm coming to the back end of my career. These guys, if no one made space for me as a younger kid, like, I would never have had the chance to grow. So it's about how much can we impart in training and that sort of thing. And a lot of the time, you'll get guys who are maybe not ready to let go of their professional career and maybe not ready to start looking a bit from the outside, because I think it can be tough for youngsters when maybe they start to play ahead of them and they feel this like animosity or whatever from the older guys, like, oh, he's not ready or whatever. Like, sometimes we need to be thrown in the deep end, and
ready, yeah.
definitely, and we need to understand that the younger guys will come in, they will make mistakes, they maybe won't be 100% ready, but no one ever is. So yeah, it's about the older guys, and I think we have a guys like Nazir Ali, Granwell Scott, Clayton Daniels, guys that were definitely even older than I am, who were ready to start imparting knowledge and whatever. So that group has been very lucky and fortunate to share the dressing room with a lot of those guys.
And the news of the team going down to the NFD came during the season. Season wasn't really over, but how does the team then, when mathematically it becomes evident, how did the team take such news? Because you guys fought very hard.
It almost looked like a weight had been lifted off the team as soon as we'd been relegated, that was a weight that we'd been sitting with basically the whole season. When you 5-6 games in and haven't picked up a point already, people are starting to say these guys are getting relegated. So that weighed heavy on the team from the get-go. So it's almost like, it's horrible to say, but as soon as we were relegated, it's almost like, okay, well, now we can play with freedom. Like, we don't have that over us anymore. As much as we were fighting for our lives, and everyone can see in 2024 the reaction, and there was a positive reaction from the squad, but when we were eventually relegated, you can feel like almost that, okay, well, now we can play with a bit of freedom, knowing that our fate has been sealed. Yeah.
And from a playing perspective, does the performances start to change? Do the guys rock up to practices a bit more lighter, free, able to try?
It's such a horrible situation. I've never experienced it before, so it speaks a lot to the professionalism of everyone, really, because it could have gone the other way, where you get relegated and it's almost like, yeah, okay, well, wait, what are we doing here? But that's not the way things went. Our performances almost got better, which I think speaks to the professionalism of the guys and of the squad. And I never once saw anyone shirking responsibility in the last couple of weeks after relegation. So I think that's positive, heading obviously down to the NFD, where we're going to need that and even more, in probably for me one of the toughest league, probably even tougher than the PSL.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get to why you say that, but actually let me ask you, why do you say the NFD being tougher than the PSL?
So that for a variety of different reasons, and if you haven't been down there as a PSL player, you won't really understand it. And Clayton was the first person to say to me, like, Mark, like, this is not the same. I'd been in the NFD for a season before Clayton came down, and the first couple of games he struggled, and he thought, like, there's no structure in the games. And I don't want to disrespect any of the coaches there, but it can be chaotic at times, where it's like end to end. It's almost like basketball, where you have a shot and then we have a shot, and it just like goes end to end. And so you've got to be fitter. You've got to be willing to accept that you're not going to be playing a structured game where the other team keeps the ball for a good 3-4 minutes and you keep your shape or whatever. That's not really how things play out. It'll almost be like Yeah, it's a counter attack on a counter attack,
Attack.
and that can be. And then the facilities are not always as good. You might be playing. You play all your games at 3 o'clock in the afternoon as well. So in the summer that gets hectic.
Oh, yeah.
So you could the season we were in the NFD, there were 3 or 4 teams up north. So that adds another challenge in itself. The travel, and then obviously there's the financial struggles. So on top of all these things and the actual sport, there's obviously the things behind the scenes where I'm obviously not. I'm not fully in the know of exactly what happens, but I know financially,
It's a big cut. Yeah.
and I know that's why my previous team, Cape Town All Stars, actually relocated to Joburg to become Johannesburg All Stars or whatever they were at the time, because to fly out of Cape Town, we were one of the only Cape Town based teams. Now to fly 25 people into Joburg for every away game, just financially doesn't make sense with the grants you're getting in the NFD. Yeah, it's not good business financially unless you can get yourself promoted.
And I think you touch on a good point, because I've always wondered, sitting and looking at the geographic location of South African football, you'll find a lot of the professional teams are concentrated within Joburg and the Gauteng region. And if we're being honest, that's one of the smallest provinces in the country. And you'll find that Cape Town, we had 3 teams now, and the Eastern Cape has Chippa and Black Leopards as well further down. And KZN is then another region with a bit more teams, but the Northern Cape, you won't find much. And, Limpopo, they'll be limited. Do you think that then answers the reason as to why that everybody's concentrated within a small space?
I don't know if it's that, but I know in the NFT definitely it is logistics that plays a big role. Just the expense of sheer expense of traveling a team around the country makes it really difficult. Yeah, but I mean, Johannesburg always has been the football hub of South African football. I think we've always had the couple Durban teams, a couple teams up north, and then one or two in the Western Cape. But the amount of talent that the Western Cape produces, like it makes no sense. And that's why for me it's devastating that we've been relegated again, because I look at like the amount of talent that we produce in the Western Cape, and for there not to be an avenue or more avenues for these guys to get through is it's not good. And I hope that changes.
Yeah. I've got no doubt that the team will definitely fight to get back up there. This has been one of the more special seasons for the Western Cape region in terms of having 3 professional PSL teams competing in the PSL. And I remember I was sitting in the office with colleagues having the conversation of, in as much as the team is going down, but I think it's a big learning curve. And I want to ask you, you said that you've never been really relegated. What are some of the lessons that you're taking from the process of relegation, going back to the NFD and knowing what you know already about the NFD?
Yeah, the first thing that we probably should have changed was if we had beaten in the NFD, if we had beaten Tuks on the last day, we would have got promoted automatically, and we wouldn't have gone through the playoffs, because it sounds like an excuse, but playoffs have a massive effect on how you start the following season. If we look at these previous playoffs, they finished this past week, and they'll have 2 weeks before the next season starts again. So Richards Bay are lucky from the point of view that they've already set themselves up as a PSL structure. They have PSL level players. They are ready to play in the PSL again, maybe add a couple players here and there. But if you were one of the NFD teams, maybe you're Tuks, you get promoted through the playoffs. You've got 2 weeks before the new season starts to start signing players, to start. So you actually can't plan. Most other teams have already, if you look at Stellenbosch, have got 3-4 players on pre-contracts, have already started signing other players, preparing for the following PSL season. But if you're a team that comes through the playoffs, you literally have 2 weeks to start thinking about what your squad's going to look like. Because if you don't get promoted, you're sitting on 500,000 Rand grant a month. But if you do get promoted, you got 2.5 million Rand a month.
That's a big gap.
So it's like, depending on, like, you could score in the last minute and you could go from like, okay, well, this is my budget for this year. And if I score in the last minute, my budget's this for this year. And like, now I need to find a whole new squad. Is this coaching staff going to be the one that's going to take me in the PSL? There's like a million different decisions you have to make in 2 weeks. Your players, how much time are you going to give them off before they have to come back in? So it's definitely not an excuse for why we got relegated the way we did. But maybe it does definitely play a part. So we could definitely learn the lesson by getting promoted automatically would help. Or I've been quite vocal about this. I think that the PSL playoff system in general is not really ideal. I think that we're one of the few countries around the world where a team from the top division gets a second chance in the playoffs to survive.
Yeah, because a lot of them go straight down.
You go straight down, 2 up, 2 down, or 3 up, 3 down. The fact that the team that finishes second bottom gets a second chance, I don't know. We were trying to find ourselves in that second spot now, so it's obviously a bit of a hypocrite to say like, oh, that second spot shouldn't exist, because we were trying to fight to get that second spot. But I don't know if it's really a sustainable model, because the NFD team, imagine winning 20 games, finishing second in the league, and then you got to go up against a PSL team that's coming down. Yeah, so tough.
And you've been an individual that, from your footballing career, you've always understood that there's life beyond football, and you've tried to build that life beyond football while still playing your football. You've got a Bachelor of Commerce from UNISA. Where do you find time for that, to study that whilst you're still playing?
There's so much time, and that's why I almost get a standard where I don't see other players doing more. We can only, as an athlete, you can only train your body so many hours a day. You can only work 2-3 hours a day on the field. Maybe you have another gym session 2 hours a day. Like most people are at work from like 8 till 5. So it's like, what are we doing when we are not on the football field? And look, I didn't smash the degree all in like 4 years and get it. Like, what I'd do is I'd time my exams so that I'd make sure I'd write in the majority of my exams in June when we have our off season. And then in the December period, I would just take fewer subjects. And then I did it over like 5-6 years. But yeah, got it done, and there is time to do it. So,
and when you do that, is there some leeway from the club with the studying, or is it something that you do on your own?
In terms of studying, like, not really. I didn't even ask for any leeway, because I don't feel, and the only time I was really asking the club is when my exams started to clash with training sessions or whatever, because it's obviously not something you can move around. But there's enough time to study and to do all these things. It's just like, if you have an exam, that's always try to like batch them all together in June, when I didn't have to even speak to anyone. A lot of people didn't even know I was studying. And then in December time, if anything did really clash, just to say, hey, look, I've give my exam timetable. There might be 3 or 4 exams, maybe 1 or 2 will clash with a training session, and then.
And what was the plan with you actually going into and studying Bachelor of Commerce?
I think it was like almost just to please my mom, to say like, look, I've done something. But at the same time, from probably the time I was 22, 23, I've been terrified of not getting another football contract, because I've seen that reality happen in South Africa all too much. So it's always been about just accumulating more skills, accumulating more things, because what am I going to do when I step out of football? Because I look at it now, and it's a crazy thing to say, but like, as a 35-year-old white male, like, who has no business experience in anything else besides playing football, like, I might be one of the most like unemployable people in around. Like, I just feel like, unless I've accumulated all these other skills and started to do other things and stepped into other businesses and had other experiences outside of sport, unless I stay inside sport, like, who's going to employ me to do anything for them? So I've always thought about this in the back of my mind.
And does it give a hint to life after sport in terms of what you want to do?
Yeah, so I have been, and this was the reality when I went down to the NFD, is that financially it's not sustainable. So I have already started looking at other avenues and have started working as well. So while I was in the NFD, I was working a second job as well. So yeah, it's been full on, and then there's obviously the content creation side of things as well. So it's like always like almost like shotgun approach, like see what sticks, do a whole bunch of things, and keep myself busy, so that when I finish playing football, there's things that I can go into.
Yeah. And I want us to get into the content creation, because you got Mike Morton Talks Football. And there's a clip you posted recently, which I feel that one's going to blow up. The South African referee, being blatantly honest, personal experiences, have you ever been on a field where you're like, no ways this guy's giving that? It's definitely...
Well, I think even in like legitimate leagues, I think as professional footballers, you're always like, this ref's killing us. Like, so it's always difficult to know. I think most fans will say, even in the top leagues in the world, like, oh, this ref's cheating. Like, it is just natural thing. Like, you always think that everyone's up against you.
Yeah.
But it is worrying when you actually hear an official, someone who had refed in our league for a very long time, say that he'd been approached like so blatantly, to say that, like, if you're a South African ref and you say you haven't been approached, that you're lying. Like, that for me was an incredible statement. So as a footballer, you give your life to this to the sport, to know that maybe some games are being affected in the boardroom and in other places is, it's devastating. Like, you never want to hear that. And I think for football fans as well, like, you spending your money on these tickets and coming to games, and the result is not even controlled by the teams that are playing on the field. Scary. So you never want to hear that stuff. So I was quite astounded where I heard him so blatantly saying that, like, everyone's been approached. So.
And you know what? How did the content creation bug bite? Let me ask you like that.
So I've been a big follower of, I love the English Premier League. So guys that have stepped out of their careers, I've been looking at. So what are these guys doing when they finish playing? Guys like Gary Neville, Roy Keane, Peter Crouch, Ben Foster. These are all guys who I loved watching as footballers, but to see their journeys after football and the type of content that they're putting out, giving, like, I wish that content existed when I was a youngster coming through, like, being able to listen to, like, what does Roy Keane think in this situation? What would he do? And I thought, like, this content doesn't exist. And now that they're doing it based on the UK game, I thought, like, I wish somebody would do this for the local game. And so I thought, let me dabble a little bit. And as soon as I started doing it a little bit, there was this massive response. So I thought, like, if I can do something or replicate, or even to a small degree, what these guys are doing in the English game, I'd love to do it, because I wish that resource was there for me when I was growing up.
And you know, you've gone. I think you've hit the nail on the head with the approach that you have. And I know we had the conversation pre-hand, but what are some of the lessons that you've learned on this content creation journey, like critical ones that you feel like
Yeah, so I think I've been lucky from the point of view. I haven't, and it probably will happen at some point, where I say the wrong thing, or I maybe overextend, or maybe go into a topic that I shouldn't really be involved in. But until you do it, you won't really know. So it is just about being very clever about what you say at what time. Timing is important. But then at the same time, like, when a topic's off limits, there's like, it sort of piques your interest. Like, why is this?
It off limits?
Why, when I go into this direction, are questions being asked, and why are these taboo subjects that we shouldn't speak about? Because I think that's the things that people are actually interested in hearing. Like, the things that no one else will talk about, that everyone's like, oh no, don't touch that topic. Sometimes you need to, like, almost delve a little bit deeper. But, like, you definitely have to be careful, especially as a current player. You have to have your employer in mind as well. You obviously can't go crazy, and I would never want to bring my football club into any sort of hot water or anything. So it's been sort of trying to temper my approach as well. Maybe when I finish playing, I can be more outspoken about certain things. But for now, it's just about maybe more neutral on certain topics.
And you know, you said it yourself. It's a very different approach, because even Mark Mayambela, your recent guest, which I believe you're going to bring that content out for more people to watch, he made mention of something of, it's a different path that players aren't really aware of. A lot of footballers, if you're done with your football career, it's either, if you're going to stay in the sport, you're going to be a coach, or you're going to be involved on the development side, or even in the boardroom if you're lucky enough. Not a lot of people take the route of broadcasting, and specifically creating your own platform like you have done. You know, when you look at that and you're still playing, you know, how's that dynamic now when you start doing this thing? How does your employer and your teammates start to react to it? We'll get to the fans, but just those two stakeholders.
No, I think I've been very, very fortunate with Cape Town Spurs, where they've been open to the idea, and there's been no real pushback from their side. But I think if I was at other clubs, I think there would have been big for sure. I know that at different clubs there wouldn't. There's almost like a media, like, oh no, you can't say that, you can't say that. Spurs have been very good to me from that point of view. We've actually had some very productive meetings where we might even start to collaborate with like the club as well, because they see the traction that my channel's getting, and I feel like there are football clubs that are not maximizing on
Their
they could
social media
definitely
reach.
100%. Like if I look at clubs like Cape Town City, I look at one that's really ticking that box, that their social media is on point. Julian, who runs their accounts, phenomenal. And I think if we can take so many lessons from the way that some of the top teams are doing it in all over the world. If I look at England, even building up to the Euros, their social media account and their social media guys, it's incredible. Like the engaging content they're putting out, and the way that they've sort of embraced that side of the game now. Now they've got like a whole zone where they have players in for like interactive interviews before the game. This was stuff that was all like before. It was like no, like
You
media,
can't,
media, but it's becoming so much a part of the game. The fans don't just want to watch football anymore.
They want to see what's happening around.
They want to know what is it? What do I like to eat before a game? They want to know like what I pack in my bag. What kind of boots do I wear and why do I wear them? That's the kind of information. Guys don't just want to be watching football now. There's so much more to it.
And I think, you're onto something, and literally as a person who's also just started dabbling in this, I think stay on it. I'll definitely give you that. You're on the right path, and I think you'll crack it very soon. The traction that you've received with the content that you've produced is a testament to that. We're enjoying the journey as well, and we really look forward. Hopefully, who knows, maybe in the future we could also collaborate there. But going back now to your football career and just starting to do a bit of reflection, a career that spanned over 20 years as a football player. We've said it, it's not very common to get a sports athlete have such a long career. Your personal reflection on this journey, starting all the way back as a kid playing sports. What have you made of your time involved in sports?
Yeah, man, it's been my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it's what I dreamed about doing when I was a young kid, and to be able to actually do that for as long as I have. When I thought about playing professional football, even when I turned a professional, I thought like if I can play until I'm like 35, that will be incredible. And like here I am now, and I'm thinking like for like my body still feels good. Like how much longer? Yeah, like I can't believe that people still choose me to play football games for a living. It's incredible. So unbelievably fortunate. I have stories for days and things that no one will ever take away from me. So incredibly grateful. And if it means that I can then create content around the game as well and stay in football in some aspect after I finish playing, yeah, even better.
And one person that you've mentioned along when we reflect on your story is your mom, and her after the school day, driving you all the way to your practices and hanging around even on Saturdays for your games. You know what? If you were to look into the camera, what message would you have for her? What would you say to her, reflecting on your journey and what you've come to achieve?
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, yeah, mom, wow. The amount of time you spent on the side of the soccer field, I don't think I can ever repay you for that. The conversations we had in those car drives, when I felt like giving up at 15, 16, and I said to you, I don't know if I want to do this anymore, and you wouldn't let me give up. Yeah, a 20-year football career is the testament, and yeah, it wouldn't have been the case if it wasn't for you. So yeah, I pretty much owe everything to your hard work and never give up attitude. So I'm extremely grateful for everything you've done.
Yeah. That's something that I really enjoy. When you look at the story of an individual, you'll find a lot of the time it's not just about the person. There's a lot of other people that have made sacrifices to help the individual on the journey to become or achieve their dreams. Having a mother who's been supportive like that to even push you when the chips are down with you, to also even support you to say, listen, if football's what you want to do. Because we know nowadays the conversations go about you go into varsity, no doubt, and then you find sport in varsity. But, having such a parent, being a parent now yourself, um, what lessons have you taken out as a parent from your mother's parenting style?
Yeah, she allowed me to pursue whatever I wanted to pursue. She gave me sort of free reign where she saw I was thriving in a certain area. She let me double down on that and always provide. I mean, on a school teacher's salary, single mom, um, I never was wanting for anything. So I don't know how she did it. Like, and that's maybe where I come from, where I have 2, 3 jobs and worried about my income after sports is from her, because she used to teach, and then in the evenings she was sewing wedding dresses and making curtains, and then she was doing extra lessons. And it's like, if it wasn't for like, we wouldn't have made ends meet. So I look at her and I think like she just did whatever she had to do to make things work, and like that's the way I probably am in my life as well. Like, whatever needs to be done, that's what I'll do for my kids. And yeah, I'm extremely lucky.
Yeah. And, Michael, just looking now at your lessons that you've learned on your journey, I mean, I, I want to call you a journeyman in terms of your career, having had the experience of being in different environments, club environments, learning and getting to meet so many other people along your journey. What is that one piece of advice that, you've probably received from someone that's really stuck with you even outside of football?
I always remember when I arrived at Amazulu at first, from Supersport. It was a really dark time in my career because Amazulu had just been promoted from at that time, not actually promoted, so they had bought their status,
Yeah.
and the club was actually not ready to be in the PSL, in my opinion. The just the setup at the time, they were still an NFD structure, in my opinion. So when I first got there and I saw what was happening there, I thought I'd made like a terrible move in my career. I thought I made a massive mistake. And I'll never forget, I messaged Stuart Baxter at the time, who'd obviously coached me at Supersport, and I just left Supersport. And I said to him, look, coach, like, things are not great here. I think like I've made a really bad mistake here. I don't know what's going to happen here. And the one thing he replied with was, there are many paths to Rome. And I'll never forget that. And I just thought like, yes, look, this is not the path, maybe not the ideal path, but there's a million different paths to get there. And I don't know how we did it, but that team finished in the top 8. I ended up captaining the team. I scored a couple of goals. And if you had asked me when I first arrived there, I thought like this. I thought to myself that this team could get relegated, and I thought I'd made a horrendous decision in my career. And looking back now, that message at that time was probably exactly what I needed. But yeah, many paths to Rome. It's not always the path you think you're going to take, but sometimes it's the best thing that can happen to you.
And then putting you on the block now, as a very senior player, what advice do you have for younger kids that are probably looking to pick up professional careers in sport?
Yeah, it's obviously I look at my kids and I don't know if I would want the same journey for my kids because it was tough, but maybe not to avoid the tough journey that can maybe create the character. And going through tough things and going through tough experiences can sometimes, and I think sometimes we can maybe give our children too much of a soft upbringing, and we make things too easy. That maybe tough experiences and pursuing a life in professional sport, you will have ups and downs. You will have coaches that don't necessarily believe that you're going to make it. Sport and football in general is very subjective. You might think I'm a great footballer, somebody else might think I'm not great. Like, that's the reality. You're dealing with people's opinions, so you will have ups and downs, but stick at it, because another door will open. There's where one door shuts, another door opens. And so with a lot of young kids, I see that their first stumbling block or the first hurdle that they see, they give up. And there's many paths to Rome. So.
And we've been fortunate on the podcast to have this book. Sorry. And in this book, don't worry, it's all good. It's all good, as it says. But we've got previous guests. We always have the previous guest leaving a question for the next guest, not actually knowing who the next guest is going to be. And our question for you is actually from Ryan Julius, South African hockey player who's actually just been selected to represent the national side at the Olympics. Congratulations, Ryan, again. But his question for you was, what do you think your purpose in life is?
Now it's about the next generation. It is still while I'm playing, can I inspire these youngsters that are coming through? Can I give them the best advice and help them have the careers that I've had? It's about my purpose at the moment is when I see it in my kids and I see it in the youngsters coming through is, can we inspire the next generation? Can we create the next incredible athletes, human beings? I want the best for my kids. I want the best for these youngsters coming through while I'm still playing, and even post-career. I want the best for South African football.
And, in closing, a lot of people are probably wondering, at 35, Cape Town Spurs going down to the NFD. What are the future plans for you and aspirations that you have?
Yeah, so retirement definitely crossed my mind many times.
Yeah.
But it looks like we're going to go again. You're probably the first guys I'm telling that. But yeah, it looks like we're going to go again for one more year. Try to get this club back where it belongs, and hopefully we get it to stay there next time.
And you said it crossed your mind, retirement did cross your mind, but what was one of the critical factors for you to say, listen, let's have another crack at it?
So yeah, relegation had never happened to me in my career, and I didn't want that to be the way that I remembered my football career. It's been so special, so amazing, and I've had so many incredible memories. And I want to leave this game better than I found it. And leaving Spurs in the NFDs is not the way that I wanted to leave the game. So I will give it like one more push and see if we can get this thing over the line, and then hopefully it sticks.
And Michael, just, from the African Playbook Network and the entire team, we'd like to thank you for actually allowing us into your space and sharing your story with us. We truly appreciate you taking the time, and we wish you, as an individual, Mike Morton Talks Football and Cape Town Spurs, all of the best. We are rooting for you, and you've always got a friend in us. Thank you very much, and wishing you all the best, man.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been probably one of the best interviews I've done in my career. So that's saying a lot after 15, 16 years. So thank you so much for taking the time and for all the research you did and diving down into my career the way that nobody has. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Michael. Wish you all the best.
Thanks, guys.
Hey guys, thank you very much for joining us for yet another episode of the My Story in My Words podcast series. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. And, we'd love to hear what you guys made of that interview. So please hit the subscription. Where? This side, that side? Yeah, most. Just click the subscription, hit the like button, and let us know what you picked up from this interview down below in the comments. We'd love to interact with you guys. So, guys, do your thing and see you soon.